Let me just say this right out of the gate. The fact that we're already talking about Season 3 of The Pitt feels like a victory in itself. Because this is not a show that was supposed to become what it became. It was supposed to be a quiet, serious medical drama that maybe found a loyal niche audience and stayed there. Instead, it crawled under people's skin and refused to leave. And now Season 3 is coming, and the confirmed character returns are telling us something really important about where this story is heading, if you know how to read them. And that is exactly what we're doing today. So settle in, because this one is going to go deep. Before we get into each character, I want to set the table with a thing that changes everything about how we interpret these returns. There's a confirmed 4-month time jump between Season 2 and Season 3. For months. That is not a small gap. That is not the kind of a few weeks later that shows used to do a gentle reset. 4 months is enough time for people to have made real decisions, real mistakes, real changes. It's enough time for someone to have rebuilt something or quietly demolished it. And when you hold that 4-month gap up against the emotional state each of these characters was in at the end of Season 2, things get very interesting very fast. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Every single confirmed return is filtered through those 4 months of time we didn't see. I want to spend a real minute on this time jump, because I think people are underestimating how structurally bold it is. Most shows that end a season on emotional devastation, and Season 2 of The Pitt ended on real emotional devastation for multiple characters, will pick up almost immediately. They want to stay in the heat of the moment. They want to keep the audience in the pain they felt in the finale and ride that energy forward. The Pitt is doing the opposite. It's letting 4 months pass. It's saying, we're not going to show you the immediate aftermath. We're going to show you what people look like when the immediate aftermath is over and they've had to figure out how to keep living. And that is a completely different, and in my opinion, much harder storytelling challenge. Because the acute crisis is manageable. The acute crisis has adrenaline. It has clarity of purpose. You are in it and you are surviving it. What comes after the crisis? The long, unglamorous work of actually processing it. That's where people either grow or quietly fall apart. And Season 3 is apparently setting itself entirely in that territory. For months after Season 2, these people have had time to think, time to grieve, time to make choices that felt rational in the moment and maybe look very different in hindsight. And when they walk back into that ER, or in one significant case, back into any ER at all, they're not walking in as the same people we left. That is the promise of a time jump. And it makes every confirmed character return carry weight that is specific and earned and genuinely exciting. Let's start with the character whose confirmed return is simultaneously the most obvious and the most complicated. Dr. Robbie, the anchor of this show since day one. The character who, by the end of Season 2, was barely holding himself together beneath a surface that looked, to anyone not paying close attention, more or less functional. Here's what we know, or what's been strongly indicated. Robbie's return in Season 3 is not immediate. He does not walk back into Pittsburgh trauma on day 1 of the new season as if nothing happened. There is a delayed return element to his arc, and that detail alone tells you so much about where this character is. Because Robbie has never, in 2 seasons of this show, voluntarily stepped back from the work. He is the person who stays, who shows up, who absorbs everyone else's chaos and keeps moving. The fact that Season 3 apparently begins with him not being there, or not being fully there, is the show acknowledging something that Season 2 spent a long time building toward. That Robbie is not okay. That the cost of being the person who always stays is finally being tallied. What I find most compelling about this is that the show seems to be resisting the temptation to frame Robbie's instability as a simple breakdown narrative. It's not going to be, Robbie hit a wall and now he's recovering. It's going to be something more textured than that. Because Robbie's particular flavor of not okay is the kind that's invisible to most of the people around him. He's too competent, too controlled, too good at being the person everyone else needs him to be. The danger with someone like Robbie isn't that he'll fall apart publicly. It's that he'll construct a version of fine that is so convincing he'll start to believe it himself. And Season 3 having him come back on a delayed timeline suggests the show is going to force him to sit with his instability rather than immediately redirect it into the work. That is a choice I trust completely. Can we please talk about Dana? Because every time I do one of these character rundowns, Dana gets half the attention she deserves, and I am not letting that happen today. Dana has been the emotional backbone of that ER in a way that is easy to miss because the show doesn't announce it. She's not delivering big speeches. She's not at the center of the dramatic medical crises. What she is doing consistently across 2 seasons is being the person in the room who actually sees people, who notices when someone is struggling before they've admitted it to themselves, who holds the relational fabric of that team together without any credit or fanfare. Going into Season 3, Dana's confirmed return feels essential in a way that goes beyond her role as a character. She is the institutional memory of that ER. She is the person who has watched everyone go through their seasons of crisis and come out the other side, or not, and she carries all of that history with her. In a season that is explicitly about consequences and fallout, Dana becomes the character who can most clearly see what the fallout actually looks like, because she's been watching it happen to all of them. What I hope Season 3 does with Dana, and what the confirmed details seem to hint at, is give her a story that is about her own interior life rather than just her function within the ensemble. Because we know what Dana does for everyone else. What does Dana need? What is Dana carrying? What does 4 months of watching colleagues struggle do to the person whose job it has become, informally and without compensation, to hold everyone together? That is the story I am here for. And if Season 3 delivers on it, Dana might just become the character of the season that Al-Hashimi's confirmed return is the one I have the most personal investment in. And here is why. She ended Season 2 in a place that was not a clean ending. It was not resolution. It was suspension, that uncomfortable state where you've gone through something significant enough to change you, but you haven't yet figured out what you've been changed into. And Season 3 is apparently going to sit inside that suspension with her rather than resolve it quickly. The dual crisis she's navigating is what makes her arc so rich. On one side, there's the medical crisis. Moments in Season 2 where her clinical judgment was tested in ways that revealed the limits of her training, and where she had to make calls that no protocol could guide her through. That experience has consequences for how she sees herself as a doctor. It creates doubt where there was confidence, and it raises questions she doesn't have answers to yet. On the other side, there's the identity crisis. Who is she in this place? What is her relationship to this institution, to these colleagues, to this version of medicine? She came in as an observer who was becoming a participant, and by the end of Season 2, she was fully inside it. Now the question is whether being fully inside it is where she wants to be and what it has cost her to get there. What I'm watching for in Season 3 is whether Al-Hashimi's crisis tips into her leaving, taking a different position, a different path, or whether she find a way to stay that is more consciously chosen than her original entry. Because there's a version of her arc that ends with her deciding this is exactly the right place for her, and a version that ends with her realizing it's the wrong place for the right reasons. Either one is interesting. Either one is honest. And the show has earned the complexity to pull off either one without it feeling like a betrayal. Langdon's confirmed return might be the single most important thing Season 3 is doing, and I want to explain why I feel that strongly about it. Addiction and recovery storylines in television have a terrible track record. Not because the subject matter isn't compelling, it absolutely is, but because the format of TV keeps pushing these stories toward false resolution. Someone gets sober, there's a moment of victory, and either the show keeps them sober as a plot reward or relapses them as a plot punishment. Either way, the sobriety becomes a device rather than a lived reality. The Pitt has not done that with Langdon. What the show has done is something much more difficult and much more true. It has shown sobriety as an ongoing negotiation, not a destination you arrive at, a direction you keep choosing every day under pressure in an environment that is specifically structured to push you toward the thing you're trying to stay away from. Because working in an emergency room does not get easier. The stress does not decrease. The traumatic exposure does not decrease. And Langdon is trying to stay sober inside all of that without the luxury of distance or calm. 4 months into the gap between seasons, Langdon has been doing this work quietly, away from our view. The confirmed return suggests that Season 3 is going to pick up that thread and not simplify it. Langdon's sobriety journey is the bravest storyline this show has committed to because it refuses to make recovery look like winning. It looks like showing up. It looks like having a terrible shift and not making one specific choice. It looks ordinary from the outside and enormous from the inside. And if Season 3 keeps honoring that reality, Langdon's arc could be the emotional spine of the entire season. Now here is the confirmed development that I genuinely did not see coming and am completely fascinated by. Javati, confirmed to return for Season 3, is apparently moving into emergency psychiatry. And that shift, that professional pivot, is so rich with implication that I've been turning it over in my head since I found out about it. Think about who Javati is. Think about what she's observed over 2 seasons in that ER. She has been in rooms where people arrived in psychological crisis as much as medical crisis, where the distinction between the two was sometimes impossible to locate. She has watched colleagues deteriorate in slow motion. She has experienced her own version of the weight that this environment puts on people. And she's making a professional choice to move directly toward the thing that is most invisible in emergency medicine, the mental and emotional emergency that sits inside or underneath or alongside the physical one. That is not a neutral choice. That is a statement. It is Javati saying, with her career, that the thing she has been watching go unaddressed is the thing she is now going to address. And the implications for Season 3 are enormous, because it means Javati is potentially going to be in a position to see her colleagues, people she knows, people she's been through things with as cases, as people in crisis. And navigating the personal and professional entanglement of that is exactly the kind of nuanced, uncomfortable territory that the Pitt is best at. I also think Javati's move into psychiatry is the show's way of putting a character inside the mental health themes that have been atmospheric across 2 seasons and making them explicit. She becomes the character who names what the others are going through. And whether the others are ready to have it named is going to be one of Season 3's most interesting tensions. Emma's confirmed return is the one that makes my chest tight. And I mean that as a compliment to what this show has done with her. Emma went through things in Season 2 that should have broken her. In a lesser show, the character who goes through what Emma went through either gets a redemption arc that ties everything up or gets removed from the story because the trauma becomes too unwieldy to manage. The Pitt is apparently doing neither. Emma is coming back, and based on everything confirmed so far, she is coming back not as a trauma survivor who has processed and healed, but as a person who is still inside the process, still figuring out what resilience looks like for her specifically. And that is so important, because resilience is one of the most misused words in conversations about people who go through difficult things. It gets used as if resilience is a personality trait. You either have it or you don't. You either bounce back or you don't. But real resilience is not a bounce. It is a very slow, very effortful process of rebuilding that looks from the outside like nothing is happening. Emma, 4 months after the events of Season 2, is in that process. And Season 3 gets to show us what it looks like from the inside. What I find most interesting about Emma's confirmed return is that the show is not letting her disappear into her trauma. She's going back to work. She is re-entering the environment that was part of what happened to her. And whether that re-entry is healing or harmful, or, most likely, both at the same time, is the question her arc in Season 3 is going to answer. I am rooting for her in a way that feels genuinely personal. This show has made me root for fictional people like they're real, and Emma is at the top of that list. Stepping back and looking at all these confirmed returns together, something becomes very clear about what Season 3 of The Pitt is going to be. It is going to be a season about consequences. Not in the crime drama sense of consequences, not punishment for wrong actions. In a human sense. The kind of consequences that nobody assigns and nobody can appeal. The kind that are just there in your body, in your mind, and your relationships because of the things you've been through and the choices you've made and the years you've spent doing this particular work in this particular place. Every confirmed returning character is carrying something specific into Season 3. Robbie is carrying the weight of being the indispensable one. Dana is carrying the weight of being the caretaker who nobody takes care of. Al-Hashimi is carrying the weight of uncertainty about her own identity. Langdon is carrying the weight of recovery inside a system that creates the conditions for relapse. Javati is carrying the weight of choosing to walk toward the hardest thing. Emma is carrying the weight of surviving and having to figure out what survival asks of you afterward. None of these characters are entering Season 3 clean. None of them are starting fresh. And that is exactly right, because real people don't get fresh starts just because a season ended. They get the next day with all of yesterday still in it. And Season 3 is the next day after everything that happened in Season 2 that what I am most excited about. And this is a genuine statement, not promotional enthusiasm, is the way these arcs are going to intersect. Because these characters don't exist in isolation. They exist in relationship to each other, in a shared space, under shared pressure. Robbie's instability is going to affect the people who have leaned on his stability. Langdon's sobriety journey is going to be visible to colleagues who know his history. Javati's professional pivot is going to put her in new proximity to people who might not be ready for what she now represents. Emma's return is going to mean something different to each person who was there for what she went through. The relational dynamics of Season 3 are going to be as important as the individual arcs. And the show has spent 2 seasons building exactly the kind of deep, specific relationships that make those dynamics meaningful rather than melodramatic.